You're watching The Attorneys, a paid advertisement brought to you by the law firm of Hollis, Wright.
Car crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with The Attorneys of Hollis Wright.
Hello and welcome to The Attorneys. We're talking about one of the most important rights you have under the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable searches and seizures. So glad to have you with us on the show. I want to remind you right at the top of the show that lawyers at Hollis Wright are standing by right now to take your call. All you have to do is dial 1-844-LAW-TALK. That's 1-844-LAW-TALK, and you'll reach someone. It's a free, confidential call. They'll be there throughout the show. Glad to have you join us. Glad to see my partner here again, Josh Wright.
I'm actually really excited about this show. It's a great topic related to the Fourth Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights. What if I told you that generally people hold a Fourth Amendment privilege individually and places don't hold it?
I wouldn't know that, so I'm glad you told me.
You're going to learn that today.
Yeah.
What if I also told you that when you're on school premises, a school administrator does not have to basically administer you your Fourth Amendment rights? They have the ability under certain circumstances to search your backpack, search your locker, those types of things.
Something else I learned.
May not have known that.
Didn't know that either.
Well, Truman Fitzgerald is with us today to unwrap this and many other issues related to the Fourth Amendment. First of all, welcome.
Thank you, Josh.
Absolutely. So happy to have you on. Tell us a little bit about your legal practice, kind of how you got into this area. And I have learned before we started this that you're not just a lawyer. You wear multiple hats in the work that you do, which is pretty cool.
Yes, sir. When I was in college, I was taking up criminal justice classes. I knew I wanted to be a police officer. UAB introduced me to my first law course, and I fell in love. Right. And it just so happens, not too far after that, I joined the police academy, became a police officer, but I knew I wanted to be an attorney, went to law school, knew I wanted to practice criminal defense, and in 2021, God blessed me to pass the bar.
This is actually a great story, and you know each other.
It's a great story.
And you knew each other before today.
Yeah.
But this is a great story. This is about why people have a passion and a calling to do something. Some people have a passion and a calling to, operate a commercial vehicle. Some people have a passion and calling to be a doctor. Some people are all in criminal justice, decide they're going to use a law degree to benefit themselves, but also work on other sides of the criminal justice system.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
One thing I love about criminal justice is people think that the two can't coexist, policing and criminal defense. The same principles that help you as a police officer are going to be the same principles that help you as a criminal defense attorney.
How did you get into really kind of this Fourth Amendment? I told you before we started that my son asked me about some amendments that I did not remember from law school, and he thought I was crazy, and he was like, how do you not know that? You practice law every day. I said, well, it doesn't work that way. That's not the type of law I practice. We come to guys like you when we need constitutional help. But how did you get into this issue of search and seizure in the Fourth Amendment?
I've always loved the Fourth Amendment because it's complicated. It's not cut and dry. There's so many nuances to the Fourth Amendment. You can have a whole entire law school semester dedicated to just teaching the Fourth Amendment.
I know he's going to unwrap a lot of this for us today, but he's exactly right. The Fourth Amendment on the issue of search and seizure is important not only from the police perspective, but from the prosecutors and DA's perspective, and then the individual who owns this right. Not necessarily the place they're in, but the person that owns it, and it's just a critical issue.
Yeah, I've watched this guy over the years, and I know how passionate he was about what he did. Did not realize he was going to just specialize in this area of the law. But I want to know from you, Truman, what actually qualifies as a search, a legal search under the Fourth Amendment?
A search is a physical invasion by a government agent. That's crucial. It has to be by a government agent in a protected area. Also, a search is a government interference with your property. So anytime you have the key is a government agent. A lot of people joke with their friends, like, you violated my Fourth Amendment right. No, the first qualifier is that the search has to be done by a government agent in a protected place.
And so I learned in the process of getting prepared for this show from some of the material that you provided to me that the Fourth Amendment privilege is held by an individual and it's not related to a place. Is that generally the case?
It's an eye-opener.
Okay.
The crux of the Fourth Amendment is that it protects your privacy rights.
Okay.
Over the years, we think that the Fourth Amendment applies to belongings in places and also your car.
Right.
But the reason the Fourth Amendment is in effect is to protect your privacy. That's the focal point of the Fourth Amendment, is to protect your privacy rights.
Where do you see this most often? Is it someone's home? Is it a vehicle? At a traffic stop? Like, where do you see this issue come up most prominently?
Most times you see it with a traffic stop.
Yeah.
Most of my clients have had issues with an illegal search from a traffic stop, or the traffic stop itself was illegal. Because that counts as a seizure. And also, anytime you have detectives executing a search warrant, a popular case I wish I knew more about the case is in New York with the gentleman accused of killing the insurance CEO. The Fourth Amendment.
It's all over the news.
It's all over the news.
Yeah.
One of the major arguments is the Fourth Amendment, is that the NYPD illegally seized property and found evidence leading up to suspect.
And what I've seen on the media about that, which is interesting because the police officer has probably been well prepped on this, his argument is, for purposes of when they tried to keep some of the stuff in the backpack out, which included his gun and some other things, the argument is that he felt like the public was at risk for something that was in that backpack, which helps probably get around some of this stuff. Let me ask you this. Why are these constitutional rights relevant? Is it from an evidentiary perspective down the road in a criminal prosecution? Is it? Let's kind of talk a little bit about that. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Evidence, evidence, evidence.
Okay.
If someone is facing trial, if someone knows that this case is going to lead to possible prison time or serious sentencing, that Fourth Amendment violation is a defense attorney's weapon early on. If you can get evidence out of that trial, that prosecutor looks at this case and says, hey, well, if we don't have the murder weapon, in that case you're talking about in New York, or we don't have narcotics, there's no use for us going to trial. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about a typical traffic stop, if we can.
Please.
And let's just kind of discuss that. So I think there are so many, we've done shows on this, and in fact, I recently did a social media post about kind of what your rights are at a traffic stop. People just assume, well, I don't have to leave my car if I have a lawful request for them to leave the car. But it's not always the case. I mean, sometimes you've got obligations to provide certain information. There are circumstances where your car can be searched, and you may have to get out of your vehicle if a lawful request has been made so someone can evaluate you. Can you just talk a little bit about kind of how this plays into that whole type of traffic stop?
Sure. A police officer has to have probable cause to pull you over to begin with.
Yep.
Once that officer is on that traffic stop, the officer either needs to issue you a ticket or develop reasonable suspicion or probable cause to keep you detained. Once that officer meets the level of probable cause to search your car and they give you a lawful request, I would tell anyone, just for your safety, if an officer asks you to step out of the car, don't argue with them on the traffic stop. I'm not telling you to give up your Fourth Amendment right, but if an officer is telling you to get out of the car, it's past the negotiation phase.
Those are two big words, probable cause. How does the courts define probable cause?
Probable cause are facts and circumstances that would lead a reasonable person to believe that criminal activity is either in the process of being committed, has been committed, or will be committed.
All right, when we come back, because I know we're getting ready to go to break, we're going to talk a little bit more about probable cause and how traffic stops work. But I also want to bring this back to the home, because a lot of times people have questions about, do I have to give the right for someone to search my home if they ask to come into my home or not? And I want to talk a little bit about that and give some good advice out there.
Okay. All right. Good start. And glad you're with us here on The Attorneys as we discuss this. We want to also remind you to follow Hollis Wright on all social media platforms out there. Whether you're on X, you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube, you'll find some really good information and find out a little bit more about Hollis Wright there too. And you can also find out different legal terms there. So go ahead and follow Hollis Wright on the social media platforms. We'll take a break. We'll continue this discussion with Truman Fitzgerald when we come back. Stay with us.
Here's some good information from our firm to you. Hollis Wright recently launched the Law Talk podcast. With podcasts becoming so popular, this will be a simple way to provide our loyal viewers with more opportunities to access information about important legal topics and to learn more about our firm and how we can help you if the need ever arises. There are many ways to access the Law Talk podcast. You can simply scan the QR code on your screen. Also, episodes are always available on the Hollis Wright YouTube channel, as well as on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you consume your podcasts. Just search up Hollis Wright in the Law Talk podcast. Don't wait, take advantage and listen today. Thanks for watching The Attorneys, and we know you'll enjoy the Law Talk podcast.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show in 2011, my goal was to do what our firm does best. Help people answer questions related to real-world legal issues they have in their lives in a way that's not intimidating to talk with a lawyer. If the issue is important to you, it's equally important to us, and we're ready to talk with you at no cost.
Yeah, oftentimes people are confronting various legal issues in their lives that really run the gamut of a lot of different legal practice areas, such as bankruptcy, criminal law, civil law, such as personal injury, divorces, domestic relations. And to be able to have a show once a week that covers those practice areas and answers people's questions in those areas, that's really the main objective of the show.
We use the resources of the many lawyers at our law firm to create a plan that has a lasting impact for each person that calls or texts. And we also give back to the community at the same time. We are here to serve you, the viewer, each week on The Attorneys.
Addiction kills hope.
But at Bradford, it all changes here.
Experience the difference
that proven treatment can make.
Find recovery, find community.
at Bradford.
You're watching The Attorneys, a paid advertisement brought to you by the law firm of Hollis Wright.
Welcome back. You are watching The Attorneys, and you can get in contact with one of the attorneys at Hollis Wright right now by calling 1-844-LAW-TALK. That's 1-844-LAW-TALK. It is a private, confidential call, and you can get your questions answered right now. They're manning the phones while we're on this show.
Truman, talk with us a little bit about, you have made a point to me in the past about, you can't claim your Fourth Amendment right at a traffic stop. You need to hire guys like us down the road for that, but you can do some things to protect yourself, to get yourself in a position to be able to use your Fourth Amendment privilege. Talk a little bit about that, because I think it's really good advice.
One word that comes to mind is consent. You always control your consent, and you do not have to consent to any search. And I'll share this with our viewers as a treat. If an officer typically is asking you for consent, they probably don't have any other thing going for themselves. And they know that can be their last resort. Always exercise your right of consent. You do not have to consent to a search.
So a good example would be if an officer pulls you over for running a red light or speeding, doesn't have any other potential probable cause to think that you're committing criminal activity other than you gave him your license, carrying on a conversation with him, and he asks to search your trunk. You have the ability to be respectful, I'm assuming, and say, I don't consent to that.
I do not consent to a search.
Okay. And then if he wanted to take it to the next level, what would he have to do in order to get there?
He would have to have probable cause to search your vehicle.
Okay.
And if that officer, if she or he doesn't have any other evidence that a crime may be in the process of being committed, has been committed, or will be committed, they cannot search your car.
Now, we've talked a lot about vehicle stops because I know this comes up a lot in that, but this concept of the Fourth Amendment, and you're right, it comes up in a lot of other areas other than just in a vehicle setting. Talk a little bit about that and kind of how one can use their Fourth Amendment rights to their benefit.
One of your most constitutionally protected areas with the Fourth Amendment is your home. We see the home come up often too. Search warrant. Law enforcement, 9 times out of 10, is required to get a search warrant to search your house. The house is what the Supreme Court has said is one of the most protected areas within that Fourth Amendment. Let's compare vehicle to house. If an officer smells marijuana in your vehicle, they can search your vehicle right there. If an officer smells marijuana coming from your house, they have to go get a search warrant.
Are there exceptions, warrant exceptions?
There's about 8 or 9 warrant
A bunch
exceptions.
of them. So yeah,
You want to do a whole nother show? We can go into the exceptions only.
We can. Consent is one of those warrant
Right.
exceptions.
Okay.
The first question when the Fourth Amendment comes to play is, did law enforcement have a search warrant? That's the very first question. The Supreme Court has said that traditionally, a Fourth Amendment right is protected on the prosecution side. Them not violating your Fourth Amendment right, all they have to do is get a search warrant. And it's up to the defendant to prove that their rights were violated. However, if there was an exception to the Fourth Amendment, then that burden shifts on the defense to prove that the prosecution violated your Fourth Amendment rights.
And talk a little bit about how this plays out in court, where you would log a Fourth Amendment privilege request to hold certain evidence out on behalf of a client that you were representing in a criminal prosecution. How does this play itself out?
A lot of motion work, which is motions are you speaking to the court and requesting something being done. And most of your Fourth Amendment, most of your groundwork is done through motions, whether it be motions to suppress the illegally seized evidence. You can even present a motion to dismiss because you feel that the state's entire case is based on illegally tainted evidence. And so your main practice work is going to be done through paperwork.
Do you think it has benefited you being on the police officer side and then also doing criminal work? Because I started as a defense lawyer many, many years ago and made my way to the plaintiff side. And I will tell you this, I'm a better plaintiff lawyer today because I was on the defense side. And I so respect the time I spent over there on that side and respect those lawyers because it really gave me more context to be a better lawyer in what I'm doing now. I got to believe that that falls into the same category for you.
That is a great question. It is a blessing to have been a police officer and still be able to practice criminal defense. One of the major advantages that I get is that I'm looking at a case from my real life experiences. I can remember being in law school, and sadly it was a horrible case we read in criminal law class, but I told myself I had a real life call just like this case we were studying in law school. To have that real life experience, to be able to reach out and touch experiences and relate to that is priceless.
We've talked a lot about searches. There's another component to this whole Fourth Amendment, the seizure side. And let's talk just a little bit about that. And can you explain kind of how that works?
An easy way to remember seizure is when someone looks at all the circumstances. Keywords that come up a lot is the totality of the circumstances. And a person does not feel that they can leave. If you are in the presence of law enforcement and you do not feel that you can leave, and when someone looks at that from an objective lens and you are not free to leave, that is a seizure.
Okay.
A Key fact is that it's not what the officer thinks, it's not what the person thinks, it's an objective standard. Meaning when someone looks at those circumstances, was Josh free to leave when he came in contact with Officer Franklin?
When you wonder sometimes, you see this on the media. We just watched this new documentary that came out last year related to the yogurt shop murders. And you wonder, how are these guys, after being interviewed 14, 15 hours, how do they admit to this crime when maybe they didn't actually commit the crime and it's come out and they've been exonerated? How does that even happen? I mean, this is a good example of that, why we don't allow seizures just to happen.
I have had a real life experience with a forced confession. One of my first major cases was in a county outside of Jefferson County, and one of the prosecution's key evidence was that my client provided a confession. But when you looked at the circumstances, my client didn't say what the detective accused him of saying, and then also that interview was done when my client was sleep deprived, food deprived. There was all these other psychological factors going into play, and that was an eye-opener for me. Like, this actually happens in real life. It's not just on the movies.
All right, I know we're going to break. When we come back, I do want Truman to talk just a little bit about how this plays out in court and how the prosecution has a burden to meet and how that burden can be impacted by evidence that may be improper and what it can result in for an individual that's being prosecuted.
All right. Truman Fitzgerald is our guest, and we're talking about the Fourth Amendment, and we're also providing that information for you on your screen. You'll see some information scrolling at the bottom of your screen. We like to make sure that you're informed in so many ways. That's why you also see that QR code there on the screen. You can scan that. It'll get you to someone at Hollis Wright right now, and you can get your questions answered. You can find out some other information there. So go ahead, contact Hollis Wright, and stay with us. We're going to take a break. We've got another segment left. We're not done yet. We're going to keep the conversation going. We'll take a break. We'll be back. You're watching The Attorneys. Stay with us.
Thank you for watching The Attorneys each Sunday night, where we come to your living room to provide free legal advice in a confidential, off-air setting. Unfortunately, with the number of calls, texts, and emails that come in during the show, we can't always get to everything. But know this, Hollis Wright is open all week long. You call us at 844-LAW-TALK and we're going to answer your question for free. Thank you for watching The Attorneys, and we look forward to seeing you and talking to you soon.
If this place could talk, it wouldn't. It would sing and celebrate all of our stories of addiction recovery, victory, and community. This is Bradford Health Services. It all changes here.
You're watching The Attorneys, a paid advertisement brought to you by the law firm of Hollis Wright.
You're watching The Attorneys, and we're talking Fourth Amendment rights, and we're with Truman Fitzgerald, and great conversation on this topic.
Oh, it's a super important issue that a lot of people don't understand, because understanding how these amendments operate, what people's rights are, is sometimes complicated, and it's why people come to lawyers. But I know this, we get questions a lot about, okay, well, I feel like, either there's been an improper search, or they didn't read me my Miranda rights, or there's been a seizure. I know those are separate issues, but how does this generally play out? How do these constitutional rights play out in trial or in pretrial? You talked a little bit about motions in limine and trying to exclude evidence, but how does it play out generally for the benefit of kind of the prosecution and also the benefit of the individual being prosecuted?
Anytime you're dealing with the Fourth Amendment, if there was a search warrant, then the burden is on the defendant to prove that their rights were violated. If the prosecution's agents, the police, if they didn't have a search warrant and they were using one of the exceptions to seize evidence, then it's on the prosecution to prove their side of why. Here's what I tell anyone about the Fourth Amendment. it's set up for the government to win. And why do I say that? Is because there's exceptions for possible violations of the government. And that's one of the issues that's going to come up in the trial we spoke about earlier in New York. The government's going to raise, well, there was a public safety exception. There's also an inevitable discovery exception. Hey, we were going to find that evidence anyway. Who cares if we violated your rights?
I like that. that's if I'm a prosecutor, that's an easy one. I was coming up with it anyway.
I was going to get to there anyway. I just happened to violate your rights.
But what happens to the evidence if there is a violation of the Fourth Amendment?
Great question. Fruits of the poisonous tree. That's one of those words that when people hear it, they love that word. It's a buzzword, fruits of the poisonous tree. That evidence and any evidence that's derivative of the violation is excluded from court.
There are certain circumstances where you're not entitled to your Fourth Amendment privileges. At the beginning of the show, I talked about one of those factoids that you provided to us. But talk a little bit about that, because schools are examples of that.
Schools are an example because the government has a less burden to show that they needed to search property.
Yeah.
A school official only needs reasonable suspicion to search property on school grounds. And the Supreme Court has said that our kids need to be in a safe environment, and education is important. And we're going to protect education, providing a lower standard than probable cause.
Are there other examples of that other than schools where you see that, where people's Fourth Amendment privileges may be impacted?
Jail.
Okay.
Jail comes up often. And the way that it comes up most, and it's almost comical, but it's serious, phone calls. Jail phone calls are not private. And those jail phone calls tell you are being recorded. And gentlemen, you will be shocked what is said over those jail phone calls. And all those detectives and officers are doing is just listening to those jail calls. And defendants are saying everything. They're talking about the judge. They're talking about where evidence is hidden. You can make a whole segment just on jail phone calls.
That's a good idea.
I hope not to be involved in that, though, I'll tell you. All right, tell us a little. You do more than just use the Fourth Amendment to your advantage. You've got a thriving criminal practice, and you do some personal injury work, but you got a thriving criminal practice. And just talk a little bit about that, because I know you represent people in different areas.
What I do is I try my best to tell stories. Even on the criminal defense side, you're a storyteller. Yeah. No one tells stories better, in my opinion, than your personal injury attorneys. They're telling the story from start to finish. But criminal defense attorneys need to tell stories too. Yeah. And people ask me all the time, how can you be a police officer and defend those accused of a crime? And I tell them all the time, one, everyone deserves great representation. And then two, once you look at these cases, and you dive into the facts, you realize either one, this person was overcharged, or two, what the state is alleging my client did is not how that happened.
That's right. Truman Fitzgerald, great job.
Thank you, Josh.
Did a fabulous job. Glad to have him on. This is a good topic.
I know, he's talking about stories. At Hollis, Wright, let us tell your story.
That's right. That's right. Tell the comeback story.
And thank you, guys. We'll be back with you next week, same place. We'll see you then.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.